this present series of where I was talking about forbidden knowledge tonight. The deeper thing that I wanted to say with the forbidden knowledge is that there is something of magic in real life that is very subtle but potent and very beautiful. As I do that, as I say that, my iPad that I have not touched and that I haven't used for days on end and has been sitting dormant, it actually the screen turned on for no reason when I said magic like that. But but something that's very magical, according to Arthur Avalon, is that matter sentience that is feeling that can be appreciated as mind and existence is actually a tenet of physical reality. That there's a correlation. There's a physical component to any experience of mind. Even as we appreciate our mind as spiritual and subtle and non unlimited, which even unlimited is a limit in itself because it's a definition. Um, it actually wouldn't be facilitated without some of the properties and the reality of matter. So you take, I've said in this video that things like entheogens, that is plant, animal, and mineral substances, according to the scholar Morris Brooklyn, that's a stronger word than drug, because drug is a buzzword with political overtones and along different economic incentives and advantages. What's called drugs, being appreciated as drugs, has amounted to economic realities and even social and physical and personal realities. Any manner of treachery, some beautiful experiences, but also treachery and suffering, both in terms of lives lost and liberty lost, on both sides of what's appreciated as law, can be attended by some of the nature of it approaching what's called entheogens with the word drugs, because I've said that a lot of words, they are imbued with they're imbued with meaning that is a part of yet beyond what they're presented as, for better or worse, and it can actually skew understanding first and then outcomes that are very profound for human beings. So drug may not be the strongest word, and entheogens may be a stronger word, and there are varying entheogens, some of which may be more accessible without breaking any laws than people would appreciate, or more readily available than people would appreciate, but their actual potence and application would require understanding to understand what by what means they may be amplified to produce the effect of an entheogen. According to different scholars, including Morris Brooklyn, has made statements similar to that on his YouTube channel. But but entheogens actually are physical, because plant, animal, and minerals are physical in the strictest objective appreciation of those terms, of that term physical. Yet they lend themselves to influencing actual mental, that is sentient, that is some people might say reach for the word spiritual, but that more so implies breath, which would be the managing of sentience. Sentience is managed along breath, because were you to control your breath, you can control near about anything, according to one person from India that I met in my community here. But but sentience is actually attended by physical matter. There's implications in this that are necessitated by physical matter to be as spiritual as spirit. Sometimes the word people are reaching for when they say spiritual is etheric, because I think that's a little bit finer. That's when you're still existing, but it's finer than what we appreciate matter as, which even matter itself is finer than what we appreciate matter as when you break it down to its essence. That's what it essentially is. That is etherically. That is essentially. That is etherically. Matter is essentially. That is etherically finer than what we appreciate as matter. And what we appreciate as matter, that which we can touch, may be the outer, most superficial, most objective, most objectified dimension of what is matter. Uh, but it's still finer than that, both as a human being, but even a physical reality. What's appreciated as inorganic, inanimate objective physical matter is actually yet finer and essentially etheric, which is why it is also mental. And that can be appreciated in theogens. And I've said in other videos that they can be as enlightening and as detrimental as any human being we would come across is in theogens. They can be that much of a detriment, killer, or also healer, benefactor, enlightening, can be in theogens. So they're nothing to play with or take lightly, yet neither to fear if we have true understanding around them. that is not compromised by implications of being inculcated into a society that is heavily propagated and preoccupied or oriented around mass consumption, that is isolation of advantage and interest over and upon other human beings in the land in arbitrary terms of privilege and entitlement, no less than gentrification and finer nepotism to my taste. Um, but um, but um uh but so I was reaching in another video is that I appreciated the distinction between for what is spirituality being similar to the lines of breath, according to Tashreeq Bey had said that that's actually what spirituality is you're referring to breath with that in yoga, but then also to works of yoga from Arthur Avalon is that were you to create breath, you would be immortal at that point because life is sustained by breath. So someone who is the author of breath is actually the author of life. And it's not that none of us can author breath, I don't think, because I think if we're actually sharing breath according to our experiences, like us, part of lovemaking is actually sharing breath. That might actually be the creation of breath. So when you share breath with someone, are you not actually creating life at that point? Had the lovemaking and the creation of a new life not actually been when you shared breath that is created a new breath, that is created new life, that is added to breath, added to life, is what you may have done there. So that is actually a little bit beyond what would be appreciated as a mortal person, because you would have to be immortal to be the author of breath, according to Arthur Avalon. But it may actually be possible to do so. So something of you may be immortal in lovemaking, as deep as that would sound. As you may appreciate yourself as a limited mortal agent. That doesn't mean that you can't be used or invoked and lend yourself towards what is beyond you. And love making and love is beyond us. That's what's profound about us when it is lending itself to us, that is sponsoring us. And uh but I wanted to say that some of what may appear for us is actually the our intentions in the first place, but then the comings and goings, our rates of activity as our intention would filter in and be mitigated of very complex cycles that are about us, amidst us, and beyond us. That is what we call the universe. What we're reaching for when we call the universe may be finer, just appreciated as cycles, and it's not actually limited or even existing within what we appreciate as time and space, but it's actually the nature and the meaning and the intention of these cycles is what's having reality and giving us a reference for a perception and experience of time and space. And from that standpoint, anything can appear for us or not appear for us as a function of our actual rate of goings on in our intentions that would amount to drawing things in nearer to us. So I've appreciated that the times in my life where I've had very significant experiences, but also coincident things that would be called coincidence, synchronicity, that are profound enough to give a person appreciation for things that are great, or this reality, this is universe as living and actually as awesome as what we've been referring to these years in these expanses in terms of worship and reverence and scholarship and in theology and philosophy and whatnot, is that maybe it's just that we do draw forth what we are. And so when something appears for us, it's actually what we are. But there may be something of twins in all people. So I've went this far to say that to enunciate that reality is duplex, singular and duplex, and the duplexity gives a perception of self and other. But also it may be truly duplex in that there are two of all things, even a human being, that as you appreciate an individual, and that all people may come from a form of twinning and be our parents' twin, but we ourselves may also have a twin that we may not perceive. We may actually be the physical, the rough, most centered, earthbound representative of our own twin and our guardian angel, that our higher self may. If our higher self is ourself, and we're saying higher self, is that not our twin? Is our higher self not our twin that we cannot perceive? But there are a few twins that can be perceived in physical reality. And when I've met them, they've been attended by unique and brilliant circumstances that represent a lot of who and what I am. But I've noticed that all these twin sets, they've been in families that have they have had profound hardship, loss of family members, so forth, loss of relationships, so forth. All of those ones did. But also I had something of that, or maybe potentially would never have family members, and that's why they appeared for me. But they were bringing in who and what I was. But there was